You put it on your app, you download it, and that's one of the first questions is like, okay, hey man, like, or hey girl, or whatever, like, how do you want it? When do you feel like you can kind of make time?
Oh, that's
When can you make
right.
5 minutes? It's
It
like,
has reminders.
and
Yeah.
it's like it's not just like morning, afternoon, and night. It's like, do you think, okay, morning, it's like, okay, so do you think it's going to be like when you wake up and you take a shower or after breakfast or when you're brushing your teeth? Like, do you want the reminder? They actually ask you down to that point, and then they set a time in there to ping you when it's time to meditate. And they just need like 5-10 minutes, sometimes
Yeah.
3 minutes. And so they're trying to, and it's really cool. Like even for dinner, it's like, so is it after you work out? Is it after you're eating dinner? Is it after you brush your teeth? Is it after you've gotten to
Man,
bed?
can I add something to that real quick? Because like shit,
But this is just, we're talking about onboarding.
dude, you're reminding me.
How it's unbelievable.
You're reminding me of all this if I'd forgotten about this experience. Because yeah, we both went through it, and it's been a couple of years. But I want to just like there's a takeaway of what you're talking about that like so many of us can use that these guys had to do, but other people didn't.
Welcome to The Experience, brought to you by Weave.com, a show that explores what it takes to compete on customer experience and build an online company that can last decades. As always, thanks for being a supporter of the show.
Okay. Today's episode.
I'm
We're talking
excited.
about Headspace. We're drinking the Vesper.
Yes.
Clayton chose today's drink. I brought on today's episode. You chose today's drink.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Did I introduce you to Headspace? Did I actually bump into it before you did?
No.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah.
All right. I think I might agree to disagree, but okay.
No way. No way.
I don't want to steal your thunder. Please continue.
I would normally I give you credit because you do introduce me to a lot, but Headspace was definitely stumbled in my probably drunken self. I know you brought this drink on, but you explain it to me, and I love the name of it and what it is, what it stands for Headspace. It makes perfect sense.
So, for those who don't know, we obviously make a drink for the show because, hey, it's a drink for the show. Why not? But we also like to pair the drink. So we do put a bit of thought into how can we find something that like metaphorically matches it, right?
Sure.
So I'm going to recount for people how it worked. Today, Jay's like 3 minutes before we're going to record, he's like, hey, I'm going to do Headspace. I'm like, that's a great idea. I love Headspace. And we're looking for a drink. And we decide to land upon the Vesper. So the Vesper, I wasn't familiar with its origin. I think I generally knew. But I was familiar that it's kind of a riff on a martini. But it's also very light. And it's a very balanced. So it has two alcohols in it that kind of balance each other out. It's obviously a clear drink. It reminds me of being of clear mind and clarity that Headspace would also provide.
Nice. And we also just learned this drink comes from the Casino Royale book.
Yeah,
the James Bond book, 1953.
One would have thought that they maybe borrowed the drink from somewhere else, but no. In fact, the author of James Bond.
Find, yeah. Okay, so just like every other show, I like to take a drink on the show so I get a full reaction.
Dude, and I want to mention one thing as you're taking your drink. By the way, side question. I've been meaning to ask you this for a while. What is the name of that genre that people make sounds on YouTube for other people to listen to of like chewing
Slurping?
and eating? No. There's this whole thing. I can't remember the acronym for it. Someone's gonna have to let us know. You and I are basically doing it implicitly and as a side benefit of this show when you and I drink in these microphones.
Oh, I didn't know that. I'm going to do it really loud.
Okay,
this
do
time.
it then. Okay,
but real quick, so this drink's in a coupe. This drink's in a coupe glass.
Yep. So up.
It's very clear, like Clayton said. It has a lemon kind of twist on top.
It's gin and vodka.
It's very James Bond.
It is very James Bond. And then the other thing that Jay, that's a little bit different here is that we made it two different ways. We normally do this. It's hilarious.
I tried to do that.
We normally double these up.
That didn't work.
I made mine stirred, which is the way you'd normally make a martini. We made yours shaken, a la James Bond.
Yeah.
Well, you think you prefer it. Try mine for a sec. Slurp twice. You know, actually drink that like a proper person. Don't slurp it.
Well, I was trying to do the same.
Yeah. Okay, so see which of those you prefer. Now that you can like A-B them. It's like a live cocktail testing. I'm going to do the same with yours. You have a preference?
I feel like mine's a little bit more diluted.
That would make sense. It's usually, ooh, that's really, really good.
Like yours is definitely a little stronger. I don't know. You'll see if you... Maybe it's because I slurped it, so I didn't get a taste of it. But
I think you're right.
Yeah.
All right. So I would have to say in this particular case, stirring may have been the way to go.
Really? Okay.
Oh, but wait. Oh, no. Each of their own. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, you know what? Yours probably... No, actually, yeah. Maybe.
All right.
Okay, so I'm actually very excited about this episode today for a number of reasons. One is I'm not afraid to say that mental health is a real thing and it needs to be addressed. And I think the way these guys are approaching it and and even as a user of the product for the last probably a couple years. I think I've been on this a couple years now. Yeah, it's safe to say. It's a very useful product. It's helped me a lot. We're very busy, just entrepreneurs, and our minds never shut off. And this product's really helped a lot. So it's
yeah, it helps everybody. I would say who
absolutely.
But it's a hard sell because a lot of people don't think they need it until they need it, or until they use it.
So premise of the show again, we bring a brand on. I'm going to break down some details of the company, and then we're going to look at the experience more like a relationship of kind of what this whole experience is like from the first time you meet it, the first time you onboard an experience, and then even just using the
when
product.
You have problems, when you might need to leave, etc. Yeah.
So I'm gonna give you some details of the company. Okay. I'm gonna dive into the founder because there's a big play on the founder of this product because of the space it's in, and they've done a really good job of leveraging his story. It's fascinating. So Headspace, it's healthcare. It's really been only an app. I mean, you can go online to their site. We're looking at it right now, but you're primarily using on, like I've used it on my iPhone or a tablet or something. Founded in 2010, so 10 years old.
That's actually pretty
Yeah. Two founders is the big guy, the big kind of main guy is Andy. Richard they've done a great job in terms of a founding team that's really rounding each other out. In fact, Richard was someone that was like a big advertising guy in London. He was burnt out. He was having anxiety kind of issues, and he wanted to go see someone. He met Andy, and they started kind of talking about the issues, and then that's like Andy was already kind of thinking about building this product, and they kind of created this like perfect team to launch the product. 75 million in funding. The last funding round.
Jay, is that kind of weighted recently or weighted like old money?
No, 2014 they had a debt round, and the last round was in 2017. They raised a Series B of 36 million. So
it's been a minute. Okay,
it's been a minute. Yeah, a couple hundred employees. I don't know the number.
Wow.
Over $100 million in revenue.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you're going to walk into that,
but that's a little bit.
But that, for a handful of reasons. But yeah,
I'm so happy. It makes me so happy that many people have invested in their mental health.
Well,
I think that's awesome.
There's a bigger bubble even around that of people who aren't paying yet, who are still getting a lot of value out of it too. No, that's really cool. I have a ton of questions, but I'm curious to the rest of these details.
Okay. I got some. So. A couple pricing strategies, just a monthly annual plan, $12.99 a month to $69 a year.
But as I recall, you have to pay that and just pay it yearly, right?
No, you can pay monthly.
Okay.
Yeah. And their mission, the company vision behind Headspace is to improve health and happiness of the world.
Okay.
So, before I dive into a little bit more, do you want me to go into the background before we dive into the product experience, or do you have some questions about what I just said?
Are you diving into the background, or are you diving into the product?
I'm going to dive into the background of this Andy guy and kind of how this all came to be, because I think it's a fascinating story.
No, yeah, please do. Yeah, I know a little bit, but I'd love to know what you found out.
So there's a ton of stuff online about this guy. He's been on everything from Jimmy Fallon. I've listened to him on How I Built This, the NPR podcast by Guy Raz. There's been some amazing interviews with this guy, and I kind of went and listened to all of them and kind of distilled down some key points from this that I think were, I think what makes this product really work is it's kind of like that Gary Vee kind of mantra of like he sat in a wine store for 10 years and learned how to drink wine and taste it. And then when it came to selling it online, like he took a different approach, and he kind of, it was like wine, for example, was, I won't say hoity-toity, but it was really hard for people to approach wine. It was intimidating. And meditation and things like that is demystifying this thing that's a little scary to approach. How do I meditate? They both took this 10 years of their life. So Andy has this 10 years that's going to blow your mind if you don't know much about him. That's
I know that is there a circus performer somewhere in the middle of that? Yeah, okay.
So I'm not going to hit every touch point. I'm just going to hit the highlights.
Okay.
Early 20s, he's in college in the UK, England, and he's kind of has this moment where he's just like, I'm just not feeling like I'm getting everything I need out of life. Like just something's not right. And in one of the interviews, they were like, so you just got up one day and you're just like, I'm going to go and be a Buddhist. You know what I mean? Like he was like, it was the way that he describes it to himself was, it wasn't like I sat down and I thought about it and there was pros and cons. It was just like, it was there was this he's like, I know it sounds crazy, but there was this instant calling that I needed to go become a monk.
Oh.
Like, it was just...
And that was in his early 20s?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. And, he talks a little bit about like being in the after and coming back and seeing his friends at the bar. He's like seeing his friends at the bar and they're all drinking and he's just, like this monk in there.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
He's a really cool guy.
Oh, yeah.
So fast forwarding a little bit. So he's been everywhere. Australia. He went to Australia, Russia, Thailand, an Indian ministry, eventually kind of like ordained him into this monk, right? But I found this part fascinating. So he went to Thailand to train in a ministry when he was first kind of getting into this, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So he started training as a novice monk, okay? So he'd done some things before this, but he started out where he said this was the most intense part of his training. He did 18 hours a day of meditation. 8 hours were sitting meditation. 8 hours was walking meditation. They had 2 hours a day to eat. There were 2 times a day to eat. It was 5 a.m. and 11 a.m. and there was no more food after that. They get 3 hours of sleep a night, and they do it 7 days a week.
Oh my God.
There was, and on top, here's the other thing. On top of this, no one spoke English. So his teacher, he's like, I would go and talk to him. And the guy had no idea. He would just sit there and smile at him. And he was like, some days I go and talk to him and I'd laugh and I'd have a conversation. He had no idea what I was talking about. Or I'd cry. This guy had no idea what I was saying to him because he didn't speak English.
So sorry, can I interject
like,
something?
Stop here, because I know I'm just like...
No, what I love about that, and this might be like, it might be reveal like a problem in my brain. When you say that, it immediately makes me think there's probably like a brilliant product to make where you just connect people who don't know the same language and they just talk at each other. And the fact they can't communicate is really the most valuable part.
Dude. I mean, just to stop that, like how crazy is that?
Yeah. Well, and like during the time of his life too, I mean, to get perspective around it, like, again, like early 20s, you're trying to find your way, who you are. And I have listened to Andy a ton through this stuff, but like he's a guy...
And I'm fast forwarding years here.
You are, but you connect quickly to him and you can see why, like he earned, and kind of your Gary Vee point, he's built a business around something he's passionate about and he's put the mileage and the hours into, and you can tell. Yeah.
He's truly like amazing, I think. And then like, again, like I'm fast forwarding, I'm hitting points that I just think are crazy. So all of a sudden this idea struck him to like trying to train people around meditation, right? Like he's just like, this really be taught to people in a less, scary way, like demystify meditation.
So let me unpack that for a second. Was he realizing that most, like there was one that was super valuable, but most people were just overwhelmed by it?
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. And he was constantly thinking, how do I get this to people? How do I get this to people? How do I teach them? How do I train them to do this? How do they need this thing that I've learned,
Mm-hmm.
And there was this one piece where he goes to Russia. This company wants him to come in and teach about meditation to his employees. And the guy's like, no. Like, you can't come in there looking like a monk. Like, this is going to freak people out. And so he's like, I don't know what you want me to do. I have to wear this, And so anyway, he ends up going back and he hands back his robes. Like, he's just like, I'm going to go and I'm done being a monk. And he has to go through this process to leave being a monk.
So, okay, I know that's probably a bigger topic, but is there any like big reason for that? Like,
because he wanted to go out and like spread this to people.
He couldn't be a monk while he did that.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Because I think being a monk, it's
a monkish life.
It's like what I said, 18 hours a day of probably just
of not eating. Yeah.
Just And okay, so he does that, but before he goes and decides to go and do this, he comes back and meets someone in Russia that starts talking about like acrobats and circus, and like he gets this crazy. He's like, I've been sitting here for a few years, like basically sedentary, you know what I mean, where he hasn't moved, and he's like, I need to get exercise. So he looks at that as like a way to like get active again. And he finds out that so when he became a monk, he had to give up everything, right? Like his money and his clothes, he had nothing. And so he found out if he went to school, the situation he was in, he'd get everything paid for. So he went and he got a degree in circus arts.
Oh shit, I didn't realize he had like oh my God.
Dude.
I already liked Andy, but that little tidbit right there made me actually hyper jealous. It's Andy, right?
Yeah.
So that made me...
Did you say Danny or Andy?
No, I said Andy.
Oh.
We're close. We know each other.
Yeah.
So, no, but like having like, how dope would it be to say you have a degree in circus arts?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
he clearly taunts it because he knows it's cool.
All right.
Anyway, so he's like, how do I make this transition from like being a monk to teaching? And then I became a circus guy. So he leaves Russia, he goes back to England, and he starts learning how to make this more. So here's where we get into like product market fit. We've talked about this with Superhuman. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit more here to the point where he meets his co-founder, Richard.
Okay, and I just want to put up like a little frame around what you've said so far. So you spent a bit more time than we normally talk about the person.
Yeah, I did, but it's just so fast.
No, but it makes sense because for those that aren't familiar with this product yet,
and the experience of it.
It drives like the company's mission and goal are very highly aligned with everything you just talked about. And truth be told, and I think you're going to dive into this in a minute, I'm guessing I have questions around it. But historically, Andy's been a centerpiece of that experience and that product.
I mean, even like the narration of the app.
Precisely.
It's him talking, yeah.
And so the relationship you have with him in a way is actually really. Yes. So I think it actually makes sense to give weight to that.
It's very intimate. It's like you're talking. You're with Andy.
Everything you did is the back pressure and all the development, the ramp up to what made that interesting.
Exactly,
yeah. Okay.
And why it worked and why this is different.
It was like if you and I decided this was important, like tomorrow, we could do something, but it would not be this. Yeah. Because we don't have that.
But it's even like you could argue that even the stuff that we work on today with our products, it's a culmination of all the years of working and
all the scars and all that learning
that we've put into this product, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So So he ends up meeting Richard because he's back in London, and what he's kind of doing is he's purposely going to these. He doesn't want it to be like a wellness center where it's a little bit more advanced or like a provocative, I guess. I don't know.
Well, I think is this. Are you saying like it's kind of it excludes some people because they're not going to like think of that being a thing that they want to go to?
It's not serious enough. Yeah, because it's not in a medical institution. Yeah. So he goes and finds a place where he can actually teach about this in a medical institution, so it feels real.
Okay.
And
authoritative. All right.
Yep. And then beyond that, he starts kind of like teaching people about this and creating these classes. And this guy named Andy or Richard hears about Andy, and he gets introduced because he's this, like I said, he's this advertising kind of executive in London, and he's this high stress, and he's dealing with anxiety and stress, and he's just like, and Richard talked about like, I was really heavy drinker, and we had a lot of clients, and it's just kind of the space I was in. That was just kind of the thing, and we would work really hard, we would party really hard, and it was just this up and down cycle of anxiety and depression and just feeling stressed. And, I just didn't have this calmness in my life. So anyway, he meets Andy. Andy is working with him and kind of talking about it. And they kind of, I guess, eventually, obviously, they clearly form a partnership. And the rest is obviously history. But I think what's interesting, before they even fast forwarded to the app, and we talked about this, they started with these early on classes where they were actually just like had cards where they were training people about meditation.
It was kind of a deck of sorts, right?
And it's fascinating. It's just like that whole like MVP of the product was very analog and very just humanized, right? And it's to like validate the problem because this hadn't been done before, right? Like he hadn't. Meditation is like.
And I mean, I don't want to jump ahead when you're talking about but when something you said earlier really struck a chord, which is this. I can only speak from like my personal experience, but where I've used Headspace as of you, you've I think used it more recently than I have. I told you earlier I've kind of fallen off a while ago, and we can talk about why. But I had like for a long time in my mind like that idea that meditation was valuable. I'd heard increasingly that kind of like idea like, if you don't think you have the time, you need to spend even more time on it. Like it's that kind of thing. But to know where to start was always really overwhelming. Yeah. I didn't know where to start. It felt like, frankly, you were doing it wrong. Yep. And to Headspace's quality, or not quality, but to their, apparently we're drinking because I can't use words. But to their credit, they did a really good job of demystifying it and making it accessible.
But I want to explain why.
Yeah, and I think, I'm holding off on some details of remembering that experience, but that was really interesting because And it goes back to what you even are talking about right now with these whole, like, how do they learn how to do that one-on-one?
Yeah.
And this is maybe a different conversation than what we have time for today of like, how do you like actually like figure out that, you know, kind of market fit and design a product, which they did with that card process. Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that was a core problem that not, so again, to high level it, Andy's taken the time to understand what it means to do this. He's understand its value, and he has the intent to bring it to like a bigger audience, and then Richard joins him in it. There's still a big ass gap to cover between that and like how to get it to people that are actually confused by it and how to make it accessible, right?
Yeah.
And so that was a really interesting nut they started to crack.
So let's go. So now let's start diving into Headspace as a product, as a brand, what it's like. I mean, so starting with simple things like just the brand itself. So most people, I think, I shouldn't say most people. There's a lot of people using Headspace at this point. But just the brand itself lends it to being very approachable. There's a lot of animations. The color, even the logo is very simplistic. It's not cognitive wise, like when you're looking at it, you don't have to process a whole
friendly,
lot. Yeah, and it's just and even the name, Headspace. You know, it's just like it's not intimidating. You know what I mean? It's not like a meditation app. You know what I mean? Like that would be scary a little bit, right? Yeah. It's just like I just need some Headspace, you know, and so there's that piece. And then even and I remember this even 2 years ago, it just stuck out to me strong. And obviously we get to a point where Clayton and I, at a local conference, we listened to the lead designer of Headspace, which we'll get into in a second. But she was amazing. She was amazing. I wish I knew her name right now.
Yeah, I might be entirely wrong, but Vicky sticks out to me for some reason.
Yeah, you think you might be right. So I don't know if she's still there either.
No, she's not. She moved on.
Yep. So, okay. Experience of using the product for the first time. So obviously I've met the brand. I get this feeling of, okay, this is approachable. I can get in here and try to figure this out. And then when I come into it and I'm experiencing it, first of all, this is a very, I think this is intentional, but it's supposed to kind of feel like it's on the go. So I think that's why they intentionally put it on the phone. If it's on my laptop, I'm not going to sit at my desk at work and just, you know what I mean? Like,
it's definitely made for a personal device.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you put it on your app, you download it, and that's one of the first questions. It's like, okay, hey man, like, or hey girl, or whatever, like, how do you want it? When do you feel like you can kind of make time? When can you make 5 minutes? It's
it has reminders.
And it's like it's not just like morning, afternoon, and night. It's like, do you think, morning, it's like, so do you think it's going to be like when you wake up and you take a shower, or after breakfast, or when you're brushing your teeth? Like, do you want the reminder? They actually ask you down to that point, and then they set a time in there to ping you when it's time to meditate. And they just need like 5-10 minutes, sometimes 3 minutes. And so they're trying to, and it's really cool. Like even for dinner, it's like, so is it after you work out? Is it after you're eating dinner? Is it after you brush your teeth? Is it after you've gotten to bed?
Can I add something to that real quick? Because like shit.
But this is just, we're talking about onboarding.
Dude, you're reminding me.
It's unbelievable.
You're reminding me of all this stuff I'd forgotten about this experience. Because we both went through it, and it's been a couple of years. But I want to just like, there's a takeaway of what you're talking about that like so many of us can use that these guys had to do, but other people could take it.
I feel like sorry. If anybody's watching this,
you could try and read.
I feel like it's like the
I know. So okay,
I'm getting married.
I'm gonna interrupt myself for a second to make a point. So we've learned, because we're trying to be good at what we do in all things. We've learned that we pretty much have had to have our mouth like 1 millimeter away from the microphone to sound reasonably audible, right? So when one tries to drink, you either bump into, in the most awkward way, the microphone, or you make these delicious sounds next to it, or you have to go over it like Jay just tried to.
So, sorry. Okay, keep going.
But there's this whole idea that you're unpacking, and we don't have time to talk about it in detail, but man, it's so powerful. What they're doing is they're really understanding how habits are formed.
Yes.
And they're doing little things that are trying to do, and it happens on a few levels. There's a specificity of meeting you where you can start. So that what you just talked about is like, how do I understand maybe what your current patterns are, and maybe some of your like possible like little tiny crooks I can get into of like starting to adapt to your behavior as it stands today, like when are you available, etc. And your intent.
Because we all have good intentions, right?
Oh yeah. Well, dude, like, hey, Jay, when do you want to go to the gym every day? Like we all have intentions, but life is different, right? And then there's another part that they did where if it, I'm assuming it might be similar to what it was when we did it. They have a way to decide how much you can bite off.
Yes.
And it can start with a very small bite, like I think of 3 minutes or less, right?
So yeah. And by the way, I set that 2 years ago, but my little boy.
Oh, that's right. You have Boss doing it. Yeah,
I set him up about 6 months ago, just because
that's amazing.
It was just cool. Like I wanted him to learn about mental health, and I just want him to know that it's okay to talk about your feelings. You know what I mean? Like, so I went through the experience again, and it like you said, we kind of.
But they do this thing, which is, and for anyone who's interested, there's a whole field around this that you can look into. That's really powerful. It's basically how do you form habits, and there's kind of, you see it in like the shitty kind of almost kind of crazy way that you can kind of lean into it in nasty patterns that again you can sometimes try and do as a business, not trying to be an asshole, but you're an asshole.
Yeah.
But there's also ways you can do it productively, and I want to say I'm misremembering his name, something Fogg. Boss Fogg. I can't remember the guy's first name, but there's anyhow, I won't belabor this, but what they're doing is something that it's reproducible in other companies. So you can ask yourself, just like they are, like what do I need someone, what am I trying, like behavior am I trying to engender? For them, they need someone to routinely and consistently over a certain number of time to like start this process to realize the value. Because a pull through on this is you do it 1-3 times, you're kind of getting it, but it's not until you've done like 8, 12, 18 times that you're really getting the value from it. Mm-hmm. So they're having to pull someone through that. And a lot of our businesses are like that, right? Like we had to get someone to kind of really stick for a minute. And they are a really cool example of having to, because they have a really big challenge and they're solving it, to get little tiny steps that then they say, okay, cool, you've done 3 minutes. Do you want to try 5 next?
Yeah, exactly.
Do you want to try 10?
And they only go to 5 minutes after. Yeah. And I, so kind of just finish rounding out the onboarding, which we've taken a long time on. But there's some other fascinating things about it. You come in, they kind of create that habit, because again, we all have that best intentions. We have to figure out when we're going to be able to actually do this thing, because it's another piece of our life that we don't have in it right now that we have to make time for. And then the other thing is when you first dive into that first piece, like you said, that you bite off a small chunk, and I give this credit to Andy mostly, but the way that he distills down topics and concepts about, just like everyone has this thoughts, or everyone thinks about these things, or everyone, but this is, you know what I mean? It doesn't make you wrong. This is how you got to think about it. This is how you have to kind of move these thoughts to the side. This is how you, and he distills it down to analogies. And then what also is so cool about Headspace, and this is the ode back to like that Vicky person, is like, they've invested so much of their money into the animations and the videos. Yeah. So before you even dive into a session for the first time, he breaks down what you're about to go into. So he's setting up that expectation of like, you're coming into this space. This is what we're going to be talking to you about. And he gives you an analogy. So I think one of the things that sticks out to me one of the first times is just your thoughts, right? And he has you sitting, he has this illustration of a guy sitting on a rock, and he's looking at a freeway. And the freeway has a bunch of busy cars, right? And those busy cars represent your thoughts. And he's like, just because it's busy down there doesn't mean you have to go jump across the freeway and get hit by all your thoughts and basically crush you, right? You can sit up on this rock and look at them and just leave it be. You know what I mean? For a second. And you can be up here and so he breaks into this first kind of exercise, and it's 3 minutes. And he just walks through some breathing, and he walks through doing a body analysis of like, okay, now let's just start with your head. Let's go to your shoulders. Let's go to your arms. And he just walks you through this thing with his his amazing voice.
Yeah. Oh God, Jesus UK Christ. Well, I don't know.
Accent, the perfect accent.
I mean, I don't know. I'd be on a side note. I'd love to know if they have more audience in the US, where we like think the UK audience voice is like genius. But so sorry, I want to keep pulling this back to like a higher level that other people can take advantage of, because what you're talking about makes me think, Jay, that like the stuff, again, like meditation feels super complex. He has a lot of techniques that you're talking about that they go through, right? Like body scanning and all these other ones. Yep. And so there's this idea of like, I have a process that's important for you, and you could pretend you're a business that like, I need you to do like accounting or taxes a certain way, right? Whatever it is. And what they've done is they've actually made the way of teaching these complex things, there's a lot to learn from them. Yep. They, like you brought up a really good point, they set up expectations, like here's what's important. They figured out like metaphors, and they've really succinctly wrapped it up into like a way to help understand, and then they're using visuals, like you said, like the animation, which by the way tie back, of course, to
Which is a ton of work.
the really simple brand they have, or
ton
not
of
simple,
work.
but the approachable brand they have. Yeah,
Exactly. And they just love that they carry that. So back to the experience, right? They carry this consistent feel across every episode, and they've taken time. Honestly, I mean, your first 10 courses, there's a custom illustration, there's custom videos, and there's a custom narration by Andy himself. And that carries on for tons of episodes. And now they've got meditation, they've got where you're, and they've got, and they break it down into categories. Like, if you're feeling anxious, you want to go to bed, you want to just calm down for a second. You've got, racing thoughts. Like, they have these different lessons that you can just.
So let me jump. I wanted to ask you about this. So there's two parts to it. One is and I don't know if you had this experience recently when you went through it again, but they have an interesting, almost kind of intentional friction they create at the beginning. So when you start, you can start free, and they give you like, I think 10 sessions to go through. Yeah. But there's also, you can't do any other content until you've done these 10 sessions, which is a really interesting choice. They're trying to basically say, you know what, we have a high confidence that you're going to actually be more successful in the later stuff if you do this. And it's an interesting approach. I'm trying to figure out what to extrapolate that from, like, other things you could use. But there's this idea of, like, we're going to make you go through this little tiny, like, process and gauntlet. And we're going to give it to you for free. And you're going to see our value in the process. But by the time you come on the other side of this onboarding process that we're giving you for free, you're going to actually be more prepared for the stuff that comes after it.
So when you
do you have
say
any
that,
thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you say that, here's my thought. This is one thing I think about. It's a very restrictive, captive onboarding flow, and it works contextually in the setting of being on your phone or a device like that. If I'm at work and I log into a product for the first time and they got my helpful guide tour and they're trying to
that's
and I'm trying to click around, I'm just like, just let me get into this shit right now,
because you need to do your taxes.
Works, you know what I mean? It's important. Yes, it's important to understand the experience of a customer and where they're sitting and where they're laying and what they're doing. It works for this because of the environment that person's in and with the device they're on.
Well, and actually, to your point, that's a good reminder. Those are delivering value from day one.
Yes.
They're not just teaching you. There's something valuable.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't want to jump ahead too far, but I will say.
No, go ahead. I think we've beaten the whole onboarding thing.
So you go through this thing, right? You get two categories. So those who aren't familiar with Headspace, and correct me if I'm wrong because I haven't been in there for a minute, but they have all these things like, are you stressed? Do you want to be more creative? Are you feeling overly busy? Do you want to get better rest? Do you want to think more clearly?
Trying to fall asleep.
Yeah, a whole manner. And so what's interesting is it kind of directs, like, there's a goal-oriented kind of idea to the meditation. There's some that can be open-ended, but I think they've realized a lot of people are using meditation towards some known desirable end, right?
Yeah.
So I ran into, I've used Headspace a couple times, but I actually was a little self-impressed. I actually found a really good streak where I found a ton of value from it, and I ended up doing it for, I want to say, almost like 9 months straight. They had this little gimmick they have this, like, they try
game mechanics.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. They have this thing where they try and reinforce you to keep a streak, and humans like to keep streaks, right? And there's a certain point, and I can kind of, now that we've talked about it, remember that I got to where I felt like I'd gone through a number of the ones I cared about of these topics, right? And I almost hit a point where it's like I was in the library and I didn't know what other books I really wanted or cared about. And I think I went through and read, like, re-listened to a book or two, as it were, like, of a topic. But I almost kind of bottomed out. And that was either because I just didn't realize there was other value sitting there for me, or I don't know. It was interesting. Like meditation, and I even know this, like it would still be valuable for me today. I'm not doing it today like you are. I probably should. But I felt, I guess by the point I'm trying to make is I was someone who was super into it, and I hit this edge where I no longer was like, that experience wasn't giving it to me anymore.
It almost feels like you kind of burnt out a little bit.
Well, I don't know if it was burnt out as much as I felt like and maybe this is more of a feature thing than an experience thing, but I was, I didn't know where to go next.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe was what it came down to.
Maybe you're, honestly, it sounds like you were quite the power user. So maybe they haven't.
Oh,
I don't know.
Maybe.
So I mean, other than that, so obviously we talked a lot about, I like to make sure in these episodes that we pull through something constructive and critical about the experience. I will say that and this is good. It's like this balance, right? Like, so what happened is I used, my subscription was through my iPhone. So I had a subscription through iTunes, and my card on my Apple was outdated. And so I stopped getting my Headspace stuff. I got a new phone. It logged me out, and so I stopped using it.
So your subscription had just been killed, basically.
Right. And honestly, I haven't really heard from Headspace.
Well, that actually goes to what I was trying to say a moment ago. Is I fell off, and I appreciate the fact they didn't harass me, but I also felt like,
well, it's kind of well, it's not like we need to feel that from them, but it's like sometimes you just need a little bump to be like, oh yeah, crap, that was shit. That was.
I was someone that they had answered a need in my life somehow because I was using it and paying for it. But when it came to time to renew and all this other stuff, like something had changed, and so, or not changed for me, but it changed in like the value I was getting from them, right? And like you fell off because of an involuntary mechanical reason.
Exactly.
How did, like, I'm glad to hear that they're getting 100 million a year and they have a ton of users, but like I worry about the people who care about it, but just like they get to a point like you or I both did.
I love the experience, and I kind of just it fell out of my daily routine
because of that interruption.
Exactly. And I didn't even, it wasn't even like like you said, it wasn't a conscious choice.
But that goes back to the habit thing. You built a habit, and as soon as that habit got broken because of something you didn't expect.
Yes.
And I got it broken because I stopped doing like a thing I cared about. Yeah.
Yep. And it's pretty easy, right? Like, I mean, most people, they have a streak at the gym for the year or 6 months. And then it's just like one day they go on
they have drinks with their brother recording a podcast, and then everything goes to shit.
And they can't get back into rhythm. Like it's common. Yeah. And so I think that's one thing that Headspace can work on. I appreciate the fact that they don't want to harass you.
Yes.
But I think this is something that's foreign to people. It's not like the first thing people are thinking about constantly. I will say there's moments where I just have like a high intense week where I'm really pushing myself and I need something, and that's what brought me back to Headspace was like, I just need to sit down and get this back in my life. Yeah. But but
that was you, like,
that was me making that. It wasn't them pushing me.
I think that, go ahead.
They're delivering so much value and such a great product and such a great message and such a great thing that they shouldn't be afraid to give people a little nudge to come in.
I mean, come back. And the way I look at it is they're a smart enough group. They're the kind of group that I think has the ability to solve that. So they're the ones who actually could, in a smart way, decide how to engage that population that has made it past the initial hump, which is a pretty big hump, frankly, of getting into meditation, getting past that intro and stuff, found some value, but then has bumped off in some way.
I will say, to give them credit, I guess people are using this in a lot of different, so like if you have a SaaS product, right? I mean, it is like a SaaS, I mean, I think,
totally is.
But they're meeting people at a lot of different places in their life, where like if you have a SaaS, more normally your customers are logging in online, the computer, and you can interact with them in different ways. Like I think right now they can ping me on an email.
Well, and you get message on,
I do get notifications. I do get notifications.
It's funny. I don't, again, this is just a random thing, but I hadn't had notifications, Jay, for probably 8, 10, 12 months. I don't know if it's because you started researching them, or literally 8 days ago, I all of a sudden started getting random notifications on my phone again from Headspace.
No way.
And it may was a software update, or who knows what the hell.
I'm wondering if they're they're just,
maybe they're doing it. So because
they just realize
they that permission at some point.
People are just they have a good rhythm, and then so I would love to see them kind of push that a little bit, just because I think they're doing great. But I mean, in terms of going back to the whole experience, we've talked about onboarding. We've talked about first experience in the product, leveraging the product. I think there's a lot of good. They've really extended the library in terms of just straight raw meditation, but falling asleep to, restless thoughts, anxiety, stress. Like they definitely have figured out a way to build muscle around those areas.
I think they built a big catalog. I think what I experienced would be, they'd be and again, I can't speak for what they've done the last 12 months, but building an ability, once you've gone through this kind of this explicit programming they have, how do you continue to get value, which clearly there is in meditation. And then maybe the offboarding part that you're talking about, when you naturally, not even like voluntarily, but kind of naturally or involuntarily fall off, how can they? Because man,
Bring me back.
I have a lot of love for this company. They could actually, I wouldn't say harass me, but they could reach out and gently poke me a handful of times in certain ways, and I would be okay with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, I mean, overall, I was definitely impressed with the company. I love what they're doing. I think Andy's story is fascinating. I think his other founder, Richard, like, he's got a great story. He's clearly smart. They're doing a lot of great things. Maybe 100 million in revenue. I mean, come on, like, that's pretty
I'm just
amazing.
glad that these guys are cash positive and still like making a difference in the world. That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they're. I mean, assume they can be cash positive. I don't know, but they haven't raised money for 3 years. So
Did they have? Okay, I know this is a little bit of kind of a specific note. So I've heard recently I know because Andy, like you mentioned, like Andy could like help me. I sleep just fine, so I haven't normally listened to the sleep things. But Andy is a kind of voice that he could tell you the stock market's crashing and he'd be totally okay with it. Like he's got a pretty reassuring voice. Don't they also have like a new person doing some stuff too? Like
there's
a woman's
gal,
voice?
I think there's a girl voice that's doing some things.
Oh, okay.
You know what else I love about this? Sorry that you just made me think about.
Uh-huh.
Is right now, and I don't want to use the word trendy, but it's definitely become more loud in terms of like mental health and taking care of yourself. It's and anxious and stress. That whole mental health thing has really reared its head in the last few years. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, yeah. I think it's a lot more. People are more open to talk about it than what's always been there. Yeah,
it's more public.
Yeah,
right. I think it's really cool that 2010. He was thinking, you know what I mean? He hit the curve before, you know, he's not riding like a wave of trendiness. He's not riding a wave of trying to capitalize on these people. Like he really cares about this. And it goes back to the whole, like, this is why I think they're successful. And I think that they take so much time in the product development, in the illustration, in the narration. They take so much time in the whole experience to make it fully immersive.
Yeah,
I think that's why they're winning.
Well, sorry. The one last piece on that too that just made me realize, as we've talked about before, it's kind of interesting from a product perspective to look at Headspace. At the end of the day, functionally, Headspace is a big content library.
Yeah,
they make it accessible for you. They give you ways to on ramp into different parts of it, and they give you different like interesting ways of delivering it. Right, but it wouldn't be unlike having like a subscription to like some magazine or article thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're a big content service, but it doesn't feel like that. Like there's a whole different vibe that they've affected.
They really do. And then if you think about even just like, if you go back to even just other like wellness things like fitness, right? Like,
like body,
educate, like content in, you know, educate, like subscribing to content library around workout programs. Like they could take a lot from this, you know, and like
those could take some Headspace. Yeah, for sure.
So one last thing before we kind of break out to just round this whole thing out. I was just going to talk about the pricing for a second.
Okay.
Because that, I think, you know, obviously impacts the experience. So are people willing to invest this kind of money? I think they've done a pretty good job with pricing. It's $12.99 a month. And then what's interesting is they do $69 a year, which is about like $5.80 a month. So it's like,
do they always run that, or is it promo?
I don't know. I mean, I went on their site today before we recorded that to check, and so to cut it in half for a yearly subscription, I think they're doing some really cool stuff with their, like, they're not it's like back to the whole thing. Right? It's balanced, it's clear, it's not complicated, it's monthly, annually. If you go annually and you want to invest that much, we're going to give you a big discount. And I pay annually for the product, and for that reason that they do it. And so I was just giving like another.
God, sorry, total tangent. But can you imagine? Maybe it doesn't matter for with the kids, and I'm not sure which of the kids are listening to it, but it makes me think immediately the value I get from Spotify, which we'll talk about in a different time. But like I hit the threshold of paying for that for a family thing because like I need different people to have different things. I could imagine this where like, you know, the kids might have their own like selection of catalog of stuff, and there'd be a different like kind of value you'd get out of that. Is it work pretty well under the same account? Or do you have different accounts? I actually
think that they have the kid meditation courses in here.
Is it under yours, or is it like a family plan? Or
they don't have. Dude, I can't remember.
Interesting.
I think I set him up his own account.
Yeah.
Because
you're a good dad.
No, because well, let's be honest. But no, I mean I try to be a pretty good dad, but It's actually because of if he's in my account and he's listening to episode, or you know what I mean. It kind of
my friend.
marks them
I
off.
had this is a 3-year-old problem or goes problem, but yeah, all my Netflix recommendations used to be really messed up by my kids.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think they'll probably get there now that they've rolled out the kid stuff, because kids obviously can't pay for it. But
I'm really excited. Well, I'm excited on a few fronts. I'm excited you brought this up because I was surprised. Like I didn't know you were going to grab this one, and I love Headspace. I'm really excited that, which actually gives me personal inspiration to get back into, because I know the value it has, that you're using it and that you've got the kids using it.
Yep.
And there's so much here. And honestly, we could do like a 3-hour conversation on these guys. There's a lot here in terms of like just like interesting product design and behavior and experience that sounds really specific to meditation or content teaching. But there's so much of this that could like be extrapolated to when you're trying to help people do the right things to get into a product or have good behavior.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I totally agree. So anyway, that's the show.
Okay.
I don't have anything else, unless you have any other thoughts.
I don't,
But-
other than I'm going to say I still think my stirred drink might be slightly better than that shaken one, but you're welcome to.
No, I think,
Disagree.
I think it depends, right? I think for your second drink, maybe where you like hit the alcohol a little stronger, you can handle it. But as a reminder, if you made it this far, honestly, go try Headspace. If you haven't tried it, take care of yourself. Get some, mental health is important, and not to be preachy, but
well,
give it a try. Don't be afraid of it. It's not that bad. It's cool. I like the experience.
Well, yeah, and I will give one last pitch for it too. I don't know where your habit falls in it. When I've done it, it's been my thing in the morning. And you and I, well, we're related, but even if we weren't related, we're very similar. And a lot of people like us, like you got, like right when you wake up, there's all the stuff you think you need to do, right? Mm-hmm. And even that 10 to 15 minutes or 20, like whatever you choose to do, but even 10 minutes, it was pretty striking. Like just what that starts to do.
Even 5 minutes. I can do 3-5 minutes and I'm good.
But so it's, you always hear this, but it's a gift that keeps on giving for sure.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So anyway, thanks for coming to the show.
Yep.
Clayton made the drink after at the Vesper. Headspace is a great product. One thing about it that we had a critical eye on, but overall it's been great. So like we said, take care of yourself.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Yeah, take care. Cheers.
The Experience is brought to you by Weave.com, the innovative tool that is helping SaaS companies automate their customer retention. As always, thanks for being a supporter of the show. You've had the experience. Now stay for the drink.
Making a drink that has a little bit of an interesting history. The Vesper. Not to be confused with the Vespa. They're both probably Italian-ish, right? The Vesper is a vodka cocktail, partially. What's interesting is that most cocktails, and actually it makes me think as I say that out loud, it's one part. Okay, so people kind of poo-poo vodka and cocktails, because vodka, like by definition, is supposed to be flavorless, tasteless, right? That said, if you get a good vodka, it can definitely make for a good drink. So this is a good vodka. We like good things. So we're gonna knock out a Vesper. Now Vesper, we actually had to do a tiny, because we care about the details in this show. We did a little bit of homework and research on what a Vesper came from. We thought it may have had some interesting, like, original cocktail, or maybe it was like a Mad Men kind of thing. As best we can find, this sucker was invented by Ian Fleming, the author of James Bond, in one of his books, Casino Royale, and has since become a cocktail. In classic fashion, we're gonna do a little test here. So normally, it's not like the ironclad rule, but it's about as ironclad as they get. Normally, for a drink like this, like a martini, which is basically what a Vesper is, you would stir it. And the idea is you're stirring the flavors, you're not trying to shake them and aerate them and whatever else. That said, Bond always ordered his drinks shaken, not stirred. So, because it's all in the name of science on this show, that's really the reason we exist, we're gonna do one stirred, one shaken, and then we're going to drink them nonetheless, no matter what we get. Okay, so let's start with, we're going to do one part, actually we'll start with the cheapest ingredients as we usually do. We'll start with, oh man, I wanna make sure I do this right, Jay. I don't make this drink often enough because I don't normally make these vodka drinks, so. All right, this particular spec we're using calls for half a part of Lillet. Now Lillet's basically a vermouth. Okay. It's a little more bitter than some vermouths. It's a amateurized wine is what vermouth is. So I'm gonna do half of an ounce per drink. Jay, do you have a preference of which of these two you're gonna get?
I'll do the stirred. I'm feeling a little bondy right now.
Well, that'd be the.
I mean the shaken. Sorry, I'll do the shaken.
All right. We're going to do, so we did basically a half ounce of that. We're going to do twice as much. So 1 part, if that was a half part, we're going to do 1 part of vodka. And it's not any vodka. We're going to choose a good vodka. Because, you know, we are grown-ups after all. And then, man, I got to double check. This is a lot of booze. Is that right? Yeah. Oh, well, 2 parts. I ended up doing ounces. These are going to be bigger drinks, Jay. So, but hey, we're doing them in the name of science and in performance, so it's all good. All right, so now we're gonna do 2 parts. So I will say, if you guys are making these at home, I just made a really fat drink. So I did basically a full ounce of that, a half ounce of that, and I'm gonna do 2 ounces of that. It's a little bit more booze than you normally have in a regular cocktail, but if you're at home and you've had a hard day and you're like, you know what? Clayton and Jay said this is the right way to do it. If anyone questions, I'll stand behind it, and anyone who asks, I will be there to back you up. All right, so we did 2 parts of gin. And that's pretty much it. So the next piece we need, you do have to appreciate a drink that has a really nice simplicity to and elegance to the ingredients. So we're gonna put some ice in both these. I've not done this before where I've actually shaken one and stirred the other, but I'm kind of excited to see if it can actually, if I can do it properly. Time will be a little different. So on stirred drinks, you're normally going to stir them. It takes about 20 to 25 seconds to get enough dilution. Shaken drinks normally take less time, about maybe 8 to 10 seconds. So we'll get ourselves a head start on the stirring. I get myself some space here. And then the trick here, if you can do it, is to try and like work around the outside of the glass. So you're just trying to like mix the ingredients without necessarily just, again, aerating them like we're doing in here. We'll get this guy started. Almost. So much focus involved. All right, I think I did it. I think I may have done it. Okay, so now, get out, as you'd expect with the kind of martini sort of drink, we'll serve these up. What you should see immediately is the reason that you normally don't shake a martini, a drink like this, is it gets really aerated. So see how much more cloudy that is. That's more bubbles, the flavors tend to fuse together a bit more. In a stirred drink, you usually get a little bit more silky texture. Now what'll be interesting is forever people swear by and have sworn by this method. Recently, people have gotten a little bit over themselves and they've realized that actually if you give this about a minute, these drinks are gonna look really similar. And a lot of people actually prefer that, and a lot of people still prefer that, so each to their own. Lastly, we're gonna dress these with a little bit of lemon. Garnish. Get a little bit of spritz on there. And just kind of make them pretty. Because Jay, I really care about, you know, your overall enjoyment of this drink. And then we'll go one further because we're trying to be bondish, right? We'll put them on like a nice little. And
fancy, man.
I know, right? It's all in the delivery. Actually, a little better on that one, I think. Actually, this one's mine. I'm gonna drink it, so I'm gonna move that up, just make it prettier. All right, my friends, look how they're already getting more similar. That is 1 stirred, 1 shaken Vespers.